It was a seemingly routine flight for Jasmine Reynolds, the CEO of a major tech firm. A flight from New York to Los Angeles, a few hours of downtime before an important business meeting. But what was supposed to be a calm journey soon took an unexpected turn. Jasmine had always traveled in first class, an industry standard for executives like her. She expected the same level of service she had always received, especially on such a crucial trip. As she walked to the gate, she couldn't help but notice the glances from other passengers. The usual buzz of chatter faded when she stepped up to the counter, where a young, seemingly inexperienced flight attendant greeted her with a hesitant smile. After checking her ticket, the attendant's expression shifted to one of uncertainty. Ms. Reynolds, I'm afraid there's a bit of an issue with your seat," the attendant stammered, her voice shaky. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean, issue?" she asked, her tone polite but firm. The attendant nervously explained that due to a last-minute booking change, her first-class seat was no longer available. Instead, the airline had upgraded her to business class, which of course was not acceptable to Jasmine. She had made the reservation months in advance and had a strict no-compromise policy when it came to travel comfort. "I've been flying with this airline for years." "You can't be serious," Jasmine replied, her patience beginning to wear thin. The attendant's voice faltered. "I'm sorry, Ms. Reynolds, but this is the only seat we have available." Jasmine's eyes narrowed, and for a moment she considered leaving the airport altogether. But this was not the first time she had been underestimated in her career, nor would it be the last. She knew that something needed to be done. Jasmine's calm exterior masked the fury building inside her. She had worked relentlessly to rise to the top of a male-dominated industry. For years, she had fought against subtle and not-so-subtle biases, being overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed. This moment felt like just another reminder of the barriers she had to break through, but now it was personal. As the attendant fumbled with the computer, Jasmine could hear a quiet murmur among the other passengers who were starting to realize what was happening. Some were sympathetic, others just curious, but all of them were watching. Her decision was already being made. "I need to speak to your supervisor." "Now," Jasmine said firmly. The attendant hesitated but quickly scurried away to find the supervisor. Within moments, the senior flight attendant arrived, accompanied by a manager. Both appeared flustered, but Jasmine was far from intimidated. "Ms. Reynolds, we're terribly sorry about the confusion, but the seat in first class is unavailable. We can offer you a seat in business class, or if you prefer, you can reschedule your flight to another day," the manager said. Jasmine's eyes flashed with incredulity. "You're telling me, the CEO of a major company, that I have to be downgraded to business class after I've specifically booked a first-class seat? And you're offering to reschedule my flight?" The manager nodded awkwardly. "No, I'm not rescheduling. And you'll never see me in business class." "Not today, not ever," Jasmine replied coldly. She stood tall, her decision already made. "Find me my seat in first class. Or I'll find someone who can." The words were calm, but they carried the weight of a woman who knew her worth. The supervisor quickly huddled with the flight crew, but Jasmine could see the murmurs between them. The decision to refuse her first-class seat seemed like an intentional slight, an assumption that because of her race and gender, she would just accept it. What they didn't know was that Jasmine was a woman who didn't take no for an answer. 5 minutes had passed, but to Jasmine, it felt like an eternity. The tension between her and the airline crew was palpable. There was no turning back now. Jasmine's reputation in the business world was built on resolve, and she wasn't about to let anyone undermine her, especially not for something as trivial as a seat on an airplane. As the minutes ticked by, Jasmine noticed a few passengers beginning to speak to each other in hushed tones, clearly noticing what was unfolding. Most of them had already seen the small drama at the gate and were now witnessing Jasmine's confrontation with the flight crew. Some were sympathetic, others seemed skeptical. But one thing was certain: they were all watching. It wasn't until the supervisor returned with the chief flight attendant that things took a sudden turn. "Ms. Reynolds, we've made arrangements," the supervisor said with a thin smile. We have found you a seat in first class. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. I thought that was the case to begin with, she replied coolly, but it wasn't. So, here's what's going to happen next. The room went silent. She paused for effect before speaking again. I'm not sitting down. Not until every last member of this crew knows that no one, no matter their rank or title, should ever underestimate the power of respect. Jasmine's tone was unwavering. She had spent her entire career earning respect, and she wouldn't allow anyone to take it away from her. Not in the workplace, and certainly not on a flight. The flight crew exchanged uneasy glances. They hadn't expected this response. Most CEOs would have backed down by now, but Jasmine had spent years confronting and defeating systemic barriers in her field. Now, it was a matter of principle. Her stance was clear, and the crew finally understood the gravity of the situation. The airline staff members began to realize they weren't just dealing with a high-ranking executive. They were dealing with a woman who had built her empire through determination, grit, and an unshakable sense of self-worth. In a few short minutes, the manager was back at her side, this time with a different approach. Ms. Reynolds, we truly apologize for the inconvenience, the manager began. There seems to have been a misunderstanding. We will do everything we can to make sure you are seated in first class. The CEO nodded but didn't budge. She wasn't about to let them off that easily. Apologies won't do. I expect compensation for this, Jasmine said, her voice stern. Of course, the manager quickly agreed. We'll refund your entire ticket and offer you future upgrades. Jasmine crossed her arms, satisfied with the resolution, but not forgetting the lesson. And the crew? They should understand that respect isn't optional. It's earned. The manager nodded solemnly, knowing that this encounter would become a story that would echo through the airline's corridors for months to come. The flight took off without further incident, but the aftermath of what had transpired would stay with both the airline and Jasmine for a long time. Jasmine spent the rest of the flight reflecting on the moment, not just for herself, but for every woman who had ever been underestimated, for every person who had ever been denied a seat at the table or, in this case, a seat in first class. By the time the plane touched down in Los Angeles, the story had already gone viral. Jasmine's encounter had become a symbol of resilience, and people around the world were talking about it. Some praised her for standing up for herself and demanding respect. Others criticized her for making a scene. But Jasmine didn't care. She knew that no one could take away her power, and that's what truly mattered. Back at her office, Jasmine's team was buzzing with excitement. The story had become an inspiration for many, especially within the corporate world. She had once again proven that no matter where you came from or who you were, respect should never be compromised. And as for the airline, well, it had learned a valuable lesson too. Never underestimate a CEO, especially one who knows her worth.